Hey everybody, my name is Adishina and this is my speech about climate change. I wanted to start off this speech with a fact which I found on NBC.com, which was, if everybody lived the same way we did, us Americans in the US, if they lived the same way we did, it would take 5 Earths to give us the resources we need. The way us Americans do, we need 5 Earths for everybody in the whole entire world to get the same resources as is climate change. I know you guys probably don't know what climate change is, so I'm just going to explain it to you. Well, climate change is something that is happening in our Earth, and it's happening because of human activity and us just polluting it, and it's just making the seasons that should be this amount of time longer or shorter. And I wanted to start it off by my speech with, what is the effects of climate change? What is it? So the first effect of climate change, I think is a big one, is the loss of ice. In Antarctica, we're losing a lot of ice. Everywhere that contains ice, we're losing ice. And this is a big effect because, first off, we have living creatures in the world. And we have living creatures that live on ice. And when this ice all melts away, where are they gonna go? It's gonna be really hard for them to adapt to a new kind of atmosphere or kind of habitat, which is hot and not really what they're used to, and they could literally die. You know what I mean? And it makes no sense because they need this cold. They need the cold. They don't need heat. And an example I found for that was that makes the place colder is this abledo. I don't know how to say it right, but it's abledo, and it's this thing that absorbs the sunlight and brings out the coolness. But albedo is like ice. So since we're having so much heat, it's actually just melting it, and it's going in the water. And albedo literally collects 75% of the sunlight. But without that sunlight, the water collects 7%, which is putting back out the heat, and our Earth is absorbing that heat, which is kind of weird, but not, because it makes sense. The next one is heat waves. Heat waves are happening, and they've been happening for a long time. Like in the tropical, their highest has gone up to 120 Celsius. And in the south, their heat waves keep lasting for days or even weeks in periods of times, and their cold waves are just shortening, which makes no sense. But an example I found about that one was there were European heat wave that happened in 2003, and it killed like 70,000 people. 70,000 people died from a heat wave. And one kind of recently which was in 2011, was in Russia, the Russian heat wave, and that killed about 56,000 people. I know, that's pretty crazy. I'm gonna go straight in. I know I've talked about like the effects and how they're really affecting our Earth, but there's countries that are actually trying to take action and put out solutions. One country or continent would be Europe. Europe is trying their hardest to fight back. And what is so good is that they signed the Paris Agreement, which is a treaty that a lot of countries signed to help climate change, like to reduce climate change and reduce the impact. One thing that they said was they created a whole market where they are collecting all the CO2, seeing who's producing a lot of CO2, and for these companies, and the companies have to get permits to distribute CO2, to emit the CO2. So you have to get a permit to actually do your business. So if you don't have a permit, you're gonna get in trouble. And it's a really good thing because it's reducing it. Because then, if they didn't have a permit, so many people were just creating it, and so many CO2 is going out into the earth. Another one was a single banned use of plastic. And they are making alternative ways of using plastic, so no one just throws it away on the floor. And there's different bags now, and I think they're coming up with there's already Ziploc bags that are already happening, so it's containing it and people are reusing it, and that's way better than what you would have thought. And then there's Asia is making little communities that are gonna be not hazardous, but resilient to hazardous conditions, so they can live in those communities and still be a-okay. But there's always little things in there, but they're actually doing a good job, which is really nice, because Asia is going to take the most impact since they have the most CO2. The USA though, Asia did actually sign the contract as well, so that's why they're also trying to reduce. But then USA, they left the contract. They unsigned it. They left the Paris Treaty, but states here are still trying to reduce it. They're still trying to follow what they said at the Paris Treaty, and they said they're trying to reduce about 26 to 28% of the CO2 they emit, and by 2030 they're trying to reduce all of that by 26 to 28% of the CO2. And also in Hawaii and Colorado, they're trying to promote the zero vehicle. Zero vehicle is a hybrid vehicle, if you didn't know, and it doesn't produce much CO2, or any CO2. And if you do that, you're gonna get a rebate, and you're just gonna get your money back. Then there's just things I want to tell you about, tips that you can actually do. And one is eating climate change food, like climate food, which is less meat, growing your own food, and just eating more healthy food, not eating a lot of junk food that produces a lot of that CO2. And then there's another way where you can actually commute green. Green commuting is very good. Carpools, zero vehicles, and another one that Canada actually did was literally tell their federal government, which was to a climate action, and they're trying to do this to reduce climate change as well. I just want to go over the things I talked about, which was just the effects, which was loss of ice, heat waves. Then the countries that are actually trying to to reduce this, and that's Asia, Europe, USA. And then the tips, which is green commuting, eating good food, growing your own food. I just want to tell you, since you're my family, I just want you guys to know that it's really good to do this, and it's really good for us to help our planet, help everybody. If you guys enjoyed my speech, thank you for listening.